When I was a youngster in the Attitude Era, I wasn't necessarily a Stone Cold. I love Stone Cold. I love The Rock, but I loved Mankind. I loved Dude Love. I loved Cactus Jack. I love that man, Mick Foley, a multiple-time New York Times best-selling author, a 3-time WWE champion, a Hall of Famer, man who has seen and done it all. And today, just so happened to pick out the same shirt that I'm wearing. Look at us, Mick. We're wearing the same shirt here. Isn't that amazing?
I think it's much more likely that you picked out the same shirt that I was wearing.
That's right.
The same shirt I've been wearing since '83. Same style shirt, not the same exact shirt. But in wrestling, you always talk about trying to give somebody something that they either can't follow, or you try to provide something they can't follow. It's like, did Ben Askren just announce his retirement from MMA?
Yes.
Right before I went on the air?
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
That's not the spot I want to be in. Yeah, that's
it's a lot of pressure.
A conversation no one will remember unless we make it special here. But that's I saw the quick knockout with Jorge, and man, that was my first thoughts always go to the guy, because Ben went down and he was just really motionless. So, man, I love an exciting knockout, but my first thoughts always go to the health of the fighter.
Are you a big MMA fan, Mick? Because correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like early on you weren't a big fan, and over time you've sort of warmed up to it. Is that accurate?
Well, actually, I had been a big fan out of the gate in the days where Dan Severn and the Gracies. And then there was that period where it kind of went away. I think, a lot of the politicians were down on it. And when it made its comeback, I just wasn't paying attention that much. And it's just in the last couple of years that I really started tuning in. I got to know some of the fighters. I think UFC in particular does a great job of making you care about fighters you may not have otherwise even heard of. And I get excited. I do enjoy them. I am more along the lines of a fan who will tune in for a big fight and specifically order a pay-per-view. I'm guessing that a lot of the people we're talking to know more about the sport than I do, but I do enjoy it. And obviously I respect the heck out of it. Leslie Smith was just at one of my one-man shows a few nights ago. I think you're talking to Cesar Gracie here on the show.
Yeah.
So he was at my show a couple years ago with Leslie. So I love seeing and talking with the fighters, and I've attended a few shows as well.
I'm of the line of thinking that the roots of mixed martial arts are firmly planted in pro wrestling, that MMA has taken a lot of the best of pro wrestling, the showmanship, the hoopla, all that stuff, the glitz and glamour. And at the end of the day, the fights aren't scripted, but it's really just like pro wrestling with real fights, quote unquote. Do you subscribe to that theory as well? Like, do you feel like the best of MMA is when they are taking elements from pro wrestling and utilizing them in the build up to their fights?
Yeah, I think so. I think we borrow from each other. So, I think as soon as I saw the low-angle arrival shot at the Democratic Convention like 12 years ago, I was like, they're borrowing from us. But then, thankfully, the popularity of MMA has allowed our world to embrace submission wrestling in a way that really wasn't not popular, what wasn't possible up until unless you were wrestling in Japan. The Japanese had a better appreciation for what and what does not hurt, because of the way that children grow up with the different martial arts. And in wrestling, you just couldn't emphasize the pain unless it was something, real pain is something you can't register facially. Something hurts so much that you can't actually sell it, as we say in our trade. But the popularity of MMA has allowed all kinds of submissions to be utilized into professional wrestling in a way that fans can appreciate.
So these days you're no longer wrestling, but you're still very busy. And one of the things that you've worked on over the past few months is this film entitled The Peanut Butter Falcon, which is a lovely film, heartwarming film, and a phenomenal name as well. It's about a young boy who has Down syndrome who dreams of becoming a pro wrestler. You're in the film. Jake Roberts is in the film as well, and it's out right now on DVD, Blu-ray, and digital. Has a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is just absolutely incredible. And I believe it's the highest grossing indie film of 2019 as well. For those that may not have seen it yet, could you tell us what makes this movie so special?
Yeah, I think it's a great story. I think people love a story within a story. And the idea that two guys who had no Hollywood connections wrote a movie specifically for a young man they met at special needs camp for him to star in. He was an aspiring actor, talked about wanting to act, and they wrote a movie just for him and somehow found the financing. They got a great cast together. Shia LaBeouf does a tremendous job. Johnson is great. Jake Roberts is really good, and Thomas Hayden Church as the saltwater redneck, the reluctant trainer to young Zach, is really good in that role as well. So it's a dynamite cast. It was a really positive experience, and sometimes you don't know until you see the finished product. But I certainly got the feeling from being on set that we were part of something special.
And is this something that you're doing more of these days, or are you trying to be in more films? Are you enjoying being an actor?
The only roles I've ever received are the ones that are written specifically for me. And so, no, I mean, I was told right before we went on the air that your director's a big fan of the Santa Claus documentary I was in.
Yes.
That's called I Am Santa Claus, and it's like a really surprisingly touching holiday film in a very non-Hollywood type of way. But I sit back, and if someone offers me something, I don't know if I've ever done a film shoot that lasted more than 4 or 5 days, but I do enjoy it. Not as much as I enjoy the instant feedback, that I got in wrestling, and I go out and I do these one-man shows, and it's certain nights it feels like you're out there in the ring without getting hurt.
The one-man shows that you're talking about, you're currently celebrating the 20-year anniversary of Have a Nice Day, which I believe I read twice, and I read it while I was in college, and I was actually going through a tough time, and reading about your experiences in college and how you were kind of trying to figure, like you weren't the coolest kid, but you had your vision and your quirks, and just like about some of your experiences as an adolescent really spoke to me. In fact, I think you kind of let me know that it was okay to wear, a button-down shirt with sweatpants. It's okay to dream of being a pro wrestler. Like you gave all of us weird people, some hope for the future. Did you realize when you were writing that book that it was much more than a pro wrestling book, that it would last 20 years, that people, I know people come up to you all the time and talk to you about it and bring it to you and want you to sign and things like that it would speak to young people like me as well? Did you realize when you were doing that, or did you think that you were just writing a book about your life and this is my life and people can take it as they wish?
Ariel, I honestly had no idea that it was going to touch people or that it would do well, but I think more importantly that it would affect people the way that it has. I had a ghostwriter that was working on it, and I dispatched him kindly, but I just thought I thought maybe I can't write any other book in the world, but I believe I can do a better job than he is doing. And it just turned out I had a conversational writing style that people liked. And I wanted to bring a sense of closure to my career because I realized it was winding down to an end. But I did not know that it was a book that specifically was going to reach out to people who were either having a tough time or didn't feel like they fit in. And like you said, made them feel like it was okay to be a little bit different.
So this tour that you're going on now, is it you reading from the book, or is it you just talking about your career? What are people seeing when they come to see you?
Yeah, no, it's definitely not me reading from the book. I'll pick out some stories. And the first night I was thinking, first night in Buffalo last month, I was like, all right, I could try to remember a bunch of things. I could write down a bunch of notes. I could have things all over my hand like I used to when I was the WWE commissioner, or I could just go out there and see what happens. And so I went out there in Buffalo and really enjoyed myself. Just talked about whatever was on my mind, as it related to the book. And every night I try to go out and give people a little bit different experience, or I try to find, if I am dealing with the same stories, I'll try to find ways to make those stories better. My goal is really just to send people home with a big smile on their face. I do comedy clubs quite a bit because it's such a turnkey operation. You show up, they've got a great stage, perfect setup where the fans are, kind of fanned out around the stage. They've got their own security. But I'm not there to, some of the stories are funny, but I don't gauge the success of the show on how many laughs I get. I really gauge it on, how people feel when they leave the venue. And usually they have a big smile on their face and they feel like the investment they made in time and money has been worth it.
Physically these days, how are you doing? I mean, I would argue that very few people have dedicated their lives, their bodies to the craft that is professional wrestling like you did. You put your body on the line, and a lot of that has been well documented. But here we are several years after the end of your career. How are you doing physically?
Yeah, I'm actually, I would like to speak to that. I actually befriended um, Leslie Smith after she nearly lost her ear to let her know that I'd been there and was there for support. So I did have a hip and knee replacement 2 years ago that really gave me kind of a new lease on life. It made a big difference. The knee was particularly difficult. I think everyone who has a knee replacement realizes it's more painful than a hip. But in conjunction, it's I'm still not walking great, but there's a phenomenon where I couldn't I had an experience. It was something completely new to me, and I realized what it was. I was passing people in the airport.
Hmm.
Like I had gone through so many years where I was the guy people were like, "Excuse me, sir," you move out of the way. And on many occasions, I needed the assistance. It was particularly sad when I would get assistance without asking for it because of the way my way of walking was so labored and difficult to watch. And so I was getting these offers even before the pain really got to be unbearable. And I couldn't figure out what the pain was. I thought it was a lower back issue for so many years. So I'd get those injections and nothing seemed to work. And finally, a friend of mine said, "That sounds like a hip." And it's like a hip, but it's the lower back. And it turns out, your piriformis muscle can get a grip on the lower back and mimic sciatic nerve pain. And once I got to the doctor's office and I saw the X-ray and realized that there was a reason for the pain, it was actually a big relief. So I'm not saying that in jest. If Ben would like to talk to somebody who's been through that, I can tell him that it does make an incredible, it's a great improvement in life. Quality of life improves remarkably.
Do you regret putting your body on the line the way in which you did?
Oh man, that's a tough one, because I will say, like, I wish, looking back, like, I had this mindset that somebody probably traveled a couple hundred miles to see me, and it didn't matter how small the show was. I was bringing my A game every night. And then you get to WWE, especially during the success of the Attitude Era, and their mindset becomes a little bit different in that you look out at a full crowd and you think, all right, there's 18,000 people out there tonight. There's going to be another 18,000 tomorrow. I have to hold something back in a way that I did not when I was younger. So while you could look at it and say, I shouldn't have been dropping elbows off the ring apron onto the concrete in front of 50 or 60 fans, if I hadn't had the mindset that every match was going to be the best match, then I never would have gotten the call from WWE, because I think and probably even fans who are tuning in for the first time can tell I didn't have a great genetic hand that I'd been dealt with. So I had to do the best I could with what I had.
In 2019, would that Mick Foley have been as successful as in 1999? In other words, would your style translate 20 years later, or do you think you would have had to have been a totally different performer?
Yeah, I think, you have to assume. I don't. You shouldn't assume, because I read what can happen on a T-shirt once. But I think you have to assume, like, George Mikan would have found a way to be great in today's NBA. The guys who use the two-hand set shot would have had to have adapted. And I did bring a lot of good little tools to the game, but I would, out of necessity, I would have to become a better athlete to compete in today's world. The athleticism is really high. We're at an advantage in a way that MMA athletes are not, in that we can connect better with our audience after our physical skills, have peaked. But nonetheless, like, I did not have a single power move in my entire repertoire. I relied on gravity to a great extent. There was one moment where I saw a match I had with Sting in 1992, where I caught him in midair coming off the second rope, spun around, and dropped him in what was known as an Eddie Gilbert hot shot maneuver. And I looked at that, I was like, how the heck did I pull that off? Like, or even think that I could? because strength was definitely not my game. But yeah, I think I could do well. I don't think I would ever have the same set of circumstances that allowed me to do as well as I did.
In the late 90s, when WWE exploded once again, you guys were like rock stars. I mean, it was incredible, the ratings and just the amount of buzz that you were generating. Every Monday night was a real special deal. I watched it. I lived vicariously through it. I loved every second of it. And I'm wondering now, we talk to fighters when the career is over and there's less attention on you and how you deal with it. You're dealing with the aches and pains. Do you ever go back into the rabbit hole and relive? Like as a fan, I relive those days just because I want to be nostalgic. But as someone who actually experienced those days, do you ever go back on YouTube or WWE Network and relive the day you won the belt for the first time, or any other moment that means something to you? Or is that a dangerous thing to go through?
I think it is dangerous. My opinion is that my matches don't hold up as well to the test of time as I hope they would. But I remember my son Huey, when he was younger, was always kind of busting on me about not being as good as Legend had it. And I told my wife, it's funny. Huey, he was like 5 or 6 at the time, and he said, my wife goes, no, he's not busting on you. I was like, no, he jokes around with the old man. And she goes, no, he's not joking. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, Mick, he doesn't think you were good. And I said, but Mick, I almost dropped an F-bomb. Like, I'm Mick Foley. And she said, don't take this the wrong way. And Ariel, nothing good can follow from a sentence that begins with the words, don't take this the wrong way. She said, he doesn't see how someone who looks like you could have ever been one of those guys on his TV screen. So when he came home from preschool, I had the DVD with me and The Rock all set up. And it was the craziest thing because within 2 minutes, both he and my other son, Mickey, were cheering for Dwayne. And even after I won, which I thought would be this great celebratory moment, my son turns to me. He was like 4 or 5 at the time. And he goes, Dad, that's really not believable that I would be able to defeat Dwayne Johnson. So, yeah, I don't tend to go back because my whole show is based on telling stories that make the matches sound better than they were, not having to live with the reality that maybe some of them weren't quite as good as I thought.
4 children, correct?
Yes.
Any of them going to be pro wrestlers?
Well, my oldest son, Dewey, he's on the creative team with WWE.
Oh, really?
And he's really well, yeah. And it's funny because he was the only one of the 4 children that I butted heads with. And it turns out that butting heads with his old man was probably the best life experience he could have accumulated, because now he butts heads with Mr. McMahon. So,
oh my gosh,
so many people are afraid to, because Vince is a larger than life billionaire. And they would tell me from like day one, my son was not shy about expressing his views, taking no for an answer in a way that's not always polite. But he's really become a mainstay of that product. And my daughter kind of dabbled in it. She's got quite a presence on social media. She was in a reality show that we did where she was training to wrestle, but some people's bodies are just not built for the wear and tear. She's got a beautiful long swan's neck that is great for modeling, but not really good for being thrown backwards.
Yeah.
Brock Lesnar style. So I'm glad she's out of it.
The infamous Kane Dewey is now a member of the WWE creative team? That's what you're telling me?
Yeah, he sure is. Now, I just have to mention the 2 things. I'm going to mention specifically something, my teeth, and then I'm going to get a gratuitous plug-in for my tour, if you don't mind.
Please.
I just got a bottom flipper.
Okay.
For my teeth. These were knocked out in that match with The Undertaker. Put back in. They were in a glass of milk waiting for me. And then over time started deteriorating. And I thought it took away from my role as Santa every December to have nasty blue and gray teeth. So I did just get a flipper, and I made the conscious decision to not wear it for this interview because of who you are.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I don't know if it was the right call or not.
Is that a compliment?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah,
oh,
I think it is.
Wow.
I'm not the fan. All right. I don't know what he does. He's certainly missing a lot of teeth. Got that ear thing going on. He's missing some teeth, so he
You're tough.
clearly paid some type of price. And the other thing is, if people are interested in seeing my show, they can go to realmickfoley.com, and I'll be in Columbus tomorrow, Cleveland, Toledo, Dayton, Pittsburgh, and then a whole bunch of shows in 2020.
Okay. And by the way, before I let you go, were you surprised? I saw you tweet about it, but were you surprised to see CM Punk return after everything he's been through with WWE? Are you surprised to see him back in some capacity?
Yeah, I knew we all come back eventually.
Yeah.
It's like Don Corleone said, just when I think I'm out, they drag me back in. We all come back in. But in the same way that absolutely nobody will be talking about my appearance after Ben announced his retirement, I was a special guest on that WWE backstage show. Had no idea Punk was there. And certainly, I never even saw my name mentioned in a single comment because that was the news of the day. But I'm glad he's back. I was always very supportive of him. I understood his frustration, and he did what he thought he had to do. Things didn't go his way in MMA, but it certainly wasn't due to a lack of effort. And you can go home again. So when it comes to WWE, you can go home again.
Yeah, because you had your falling out as well, and you came back, right?
Several fallings out.
Yeah.
So it's funny is I was brought back a couple of years ago to give a promotional interview for Hell in a Cell, and I think Vince McMahon brought up my name as a way to add some spice to the event, and somebody said, I thought Mick Foley had heat with the company, and Vince said, I don't give a damn if he's got heat. Can he get interest? So all it takes is a phone call. I don't care who you are or how bitter you think you are at the company. When you see that 203 area code coming your way, you perk up. But I'll leave you with this story. There's always an ongoing battle. Mr. McMahon didn't for the Foley sweatpants, right?
Yes.
And I got an invite a few years ago to be part of SummerSlam to do a segment with Jon Stewart. And so I asked the head of talent relations, I said, let me ask you this. I said, did John specifically ask for me? And they said, yes, he did. I said, good. And I'm wearing sweatpants because I was appearing like little sophomore battles he waged, like get a little victory on Mr. McMahon. So I get ready to go out, and I'm in what we call the gorilla position, which is that curtained off area, the last thing you see before you go down the ramp. And Mr. McMahon sizes me up. He goes, lose the fanny pack. And I was like, all right, I'll lose the fanny pack. I'm going to take these small victories where I can get them. So, yeah, I am a man with a flannel shirt and sweatpants, and I appreciate everyone who supports what I do and allows me to go through life looking this way.
Oh, you are a legend, my friend. And honestly, it's a huge honor for me. Like 1998, Ariel, 16 years old, we would all gather around every month at my friend's house, watch the pay-per-views, and you are our guy. We loved you. And to have you on my show today, to have you even say my name is a massive honor for me. So congratulations on everything. I hope the tour goes great. And again, I want to remind people, The Peanut Butter Falcon is a phenomenal movie. You can get it right now. DVD, Blu-ray, digital. It is a heartwarming film. If you're not a pro wrestling fan, it has nothing to do. It's really a lot more than that. If you are, you will enjoy it as well. But it's really just as it says on the box right over there, the sweetest darn film of the decade. Shia LaBeouf is great in it. Everyone's great in it, and it's cool to see you in it as well, Mick. Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate you doing this, and I appreciate you doing it via Skype because I heard that was a big thing to get you to do it that way.
The only other time I did Skype was when I got ejected from a chicken wing eating contest for hiding wings in my fanny pack. And so I did do it. It's you guys in TMZ. I was going through great lengths to try to figure out how to use Skype last night, and I'm glad I did.
We appreciate it. All the best to you. And hopefully one of these days we can meet in person as well.
I like that. I love it. Can I just say in closing, I've been to a handful of MMA events, and the guys, not only the fighters, but the fans, not only the fans, but the fighters go out of their way. It's a really kind atmosphere. Dana's very accommodating, really appreciate it. And it's really nice to have that cross section. I know you'll probably receive a handful of complaints about having a pro wrestler on your show, but I think by and large people respect it and understand the work that goes into it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mick. All the best to you.
Thank you, Ariel. Appreciate you having me on.
All right, there he is.
Have a nice day.
Yes, there he is, Mick Foley. And if in case you're a fan of Ariel and the Bad Guy on ESPN Plus, at the very beginning when I say right here on ESPN Plus, it's in honor of Mick Foley, by the way. So there's your little connection between the two. Hello, everyone. It's Ariel Helwani. I just came here to thank you for watching our ESPN YouTube channel. It's the best. You know what else is the best? The ESPN app. You can get highlights, analysis, all that stuff and more. And if you want premium content and live streaming sports, there's only one place for all of that. It's ESPN Plus.